Well, President Trump is certainly wasting no time. On his first day of work, the president has pardoned almost all of the January 6th rioters. He's taken the U.S. out of the World Health Organization and the Paris Climate Agreement, and he has set a date for slapping tariffs on imports from Canada and Mexico. He says this is the beginning of the end of countries taking advantage of the United States.
These are the hostages, approximately 1,500 for a pardon.
Will President Trump listen to Europe? Or will he negotiate with Russia and China without Europe?
Europe is not a priority for Mr. Trump.
We see with concerns the announcement to withdraw from the WHO organization.
You know, Gaza is interesting. It's a phenomenal location. On the sea, some beautiful things could be done with it.
My attitude and approach is keep calm. Let's see what policies are actually enacted and implemented before we get overexcited.
The second Trump administration officially began on Monday, and it has been 24 hours of nonstop executive orders coming from the White House, but not only from there. Just hours after he was sworn in for a second term, Trump appeared on stage at a sporting arena in Washington, D.C., filled with his supporters. Now, that is where he signed his first series of executive orders in a piece of political theater, merging a Trump rally with his presidential powers. He finished by throwing his pens into the crowd. Now, later, back inside the Oval Office, he signed more orders. They included a sweeping pardon for around 1,500 rioters who attacked the U.S. Capitol 4 years ago in an unsuccessful attempt to overturn Joe Biden's presidential election victory, a victory which Trump has always publicly refused to accept. All right, let's take a look at some of the other executive orders signed by Trump on day one of his second term. Along with pardoning the Capitol rioters, Trump also signed multiple orders aimed at curbing immigration. He declared a national emergency along the border between the U.S. and Mexico. And he also issued an order to end birthright citizenship, a right guaranteed in the U.S. Constitution, which gives U.S. citizenship to any person born on U.S. soil. On Tuesday, 18 U.S. states sued to block this order. President Trump also withdrew the United States from the Paris Climate Agreement for the second time. He also reversed other Biden-era initiatives to tackle global warming. Plus, Trump said that the U.S. is paying too much to the World Health Organization, so he withdrew the U.S. from the WHO. Well, joining me now is Julius von der Laar. Julius was a member of Barack Obama's campaign back in 2008 and 2012. Julius is now a political campaign advisor right here in Germany, and he joins us tonight from here in Berlin. Julius, it's good to have you back on the show. We saw the inauguration yesterday of President Trump 2.0. I just would like to hear your thoughts on this second Trump presidency.
Well, I mean, let's start with the inaugural speech. I thought it was a continuation of the campaign rhetoric that we've heard over the last 2 years. He talked about all the things, the migration crisis. He talked about the need for America to come back. It was ultimately the Make America Great Again speech that he had been giving for 2 years. And the interesting thing was that, of course, he was saying that America is being ripped off, that people were treated horribly, unfairly. And all of a sudden, while Joe Biden was sitting right next to him. So it wasn't the address that some had expected of unity, of people coming together, the country being united. It was the Trump MAGA speech, and I think it was pretty effective, at least for half the country.
Julius, you know what it's like when a candidate moves from campaigning to governing. There's a serious learning curve in the first term, especially when you go to the White House. But when the second term begins, the initial barriers, they are no longer a factor. What does this mean for the Trump administration this time around?
Well, I think a couple of things. One, Trump doesn't have to consider anything politically anymore when it comes to re-election. He knows this is his final term, and he is basically unshackled. He can just basically move forward however he plans to. And I think we saw that yesterday. Right after the inaugural address, he went over and signed executive order after executive order. And also, I think it shows given the fact that he surrendered himself by a group of individuals from the business side, but also his new cabinet of folks who are basically 100% loyal and at his side. So I think it shows that Trump comes and plans to do business, most importantly, to get his agenda passed.
For the first time in U.S. history, foreign leaders were invited to a presidential inauguration on Monday. And this is definitely a break with tradition. That said, there was only one European political leader at Trump's inauguration. That was Italy's Prime Minister Giorgia Meloni. Was that meant to send Europe a signal? And if so, what is the message, do you think?
I think the signal that we all saw and most importantly heard was that Donald Trump says it is America first. When I see the discussion around the Panama Canal, when he said we're being ripped off, we're being treated very unfairly, he didn't enact any of the tariffs that he had promised during the campaign, at least not on day one. But I think it is clear that Trump at least has him in the back of his hand. So I think it was a strong message towards Europe. Also, given the press conference that he did 2 weeks ago, where he said, look, you have to do more. Not just only when it comes to NATO, but especially when it comes to trade. So I think the message was heard in Berlin and in capitals all across Europe that, it is not the transatlantic partnership that we saw under Joe Biden.
Trump began his second term by taking the U.S. out of the World Health Organization, taking the U.S. out of the Paris Climate Accord, just to name a few. I'd like to get your thoughts on Trump's impact on European politics. Yesterday, Trump announced that he is shutting down the Green Deal in the U.S. I want you to take a listen to what the Prime Minister of Belgium said today in Davos at the World Economic Forum about that. Take a listen.
I think as Europeans, we should definitely stick to the goal. So what we have in the Green Deal, we agreed to it. We should stick to it from a climate perspective, but also from a competitiveness perspective, we should stick to it. What we should change is be clear on the goal, but more open on the ways to achieve it.
So if I understand him correctly, Julius, Donald Trump is not having that great of an impact here. Is that what you're hearing from the political players that you talk with?
Well, consider that we're also in the middle of an election campaign right here in Germany with basically 30 days to go. And exactly what we just heard is the rhetoric that's being displayed in the German election campaign by some of the politicians saying, well, why should we move ahead with the clear climate goals if, one, the United States or China is not adhering to them anymore? Or should we be at the forefront of actually achieving all those goals? Or should we maybe turn them down just a little bit as well? So I think it does have an impact. But most importantly, Europe is not speaking with one voice. And I think this is what is required of Europe if we want to have any sort of impact in global politics. We got to stand together. And I think the matter of the fact is that there is Giorgia Meloni in Italy. We've got, of course, Viktor Orban. We've got Robert Fico. We've got an election campaign that's going to take place in France and, of course, Germany as well. So I don't think, looking at Europe, we're anything close to united. More importantly, we're more divided than ever.
Trump's new Secretary of State, Marco Rubio, he was sworn in today. Take a listen to what he said, then we're going to talk about it.
President Trump's made it very clear, everything we do, and this is true in government, but especially at the Department of State, everything we do must be justified by the answer to one of three questions. Does it make us stronger? Does it make us safer? And does it make us more prosperous? If it doesn't do one of those three things, we will not do it.
So, Julius, is this a new approach to U.S. foreign policy? European governments have heard this before in various iterations from Democratic and Republican presidents, haven't they?
I think this is the basic task of any government to make sure that, the own position, the own country is strengthened. So it might be rhetorically a nuanced position compared to what Barack Obama would say. But in the end, it is America first. And that is what Marco Rubio is articulating. Look, the question is also, what role does Marco Rubio actually play when it comes to governing? Is foreign policy being run exclusively through the White House and Marco Rubio is being sent on a private jet to capitals all across the globe? Or does he actually have any sort of impact? My understanding is that it is Donald Trump who's calling the shots and that basically everyone else is sort of going out and fulfilling the duties that are asked from Donald Trump.
Interesting you say that, because ahead of the start of the second Trump administration, another man has attracted a lot of attention, the world's richest man, Elon Musk. Now, we know that he'll be heading the new Department of Government Efficiency for President Trump. Right. But here in Europe, it is how Musk has used his platform X to voice his opinions about UK and German politics. He has said, for example, that the far-right AfD party is the only party to save Germany in next month's national election. He's called for German Chancellor Olaf Scholz to resign. With all of that in mind, I want you to take a listen to what German Chancellor Olaf Scholz said today at the World Economic Forum in Davos, Switzerland.
We have the freedom of speech in Europe, and in Germany everyone can say what he wants, even if he is a billionaire. And what we do not accept is if this is supporting extreme right positions. And that is what I would like to repeat again.
So, Julius, help us understand what the German Chancellor is saying there. First Amendment freedom of speech, as we know it in the U.S., is not the same as freedom of expression here in Germany, right?
Brent, you asked me a question that I cannot answer. I don't know exactly what he said. He says, of course, at the one hand, anyone can say whatever they want to, but you can't say extreme things and we will not tolerate it. What does it mean to not actually tolerate it? Is he going to actually, go on to say there's some limitations, what X can do and what Elon Musk can do? Now, we can talk about the merits of what, Elon Musk says and how it impacts foreign elections. And I think we should have that discussion. Mm-hmm. But again, Olaf Scholz has the opportunity to use this, especially when it comes to the German election campaign. But I don't think anyone clearly goes out and knows what Olaf Scholz just said.
Let me ask you then, before we run out of time, you are a campaign strategist. How much of an impact can Elon Musk really have on this upcoming German election? I mean, is he the big wild card here?
Well, I think he can be an X factor. Looking back at the U.S. election, he donated $250 million to Donald Trump. I don't think he's going to donate $250 million in this European or German election. But again, he controls the platform. He controls the rails. So I think there is a impact to be had. And the conversation that he had with Alice Weidel, I don't think it got great reach on X alone. But given the fact that everyone else, including us, were talking about it, of course, it gave it a tremendous reach. So there is an impact to be had by Elon Musk on this election campaign.
Yeah, that's right. Alice Weidel, of course, the chancellor candidate for the far-right AfD party. Yeah. Well, we will see what happens next month on Election Day here in Germany. Julius von der Laar. Julius, it's always good to talk with you. We appreciate your insights. Thank you.
Good seeing you, Brent. Thank you.
Well, President Trump's second term poses many challenges for Europe, especially in the areas of trade, defense, and climate policy. Now, his America First doctrine stands in sharp contrast to his predecessor, Joe Biden, who sought to cultivate closer transatlantic cooperation. My colleague, Lucia Schulten, spoke to senior European Union lawmaker David McAllister, and she asked him how European leaders should approach this Trump presidency.
The United States is our most important ally and our most important trading partner, so a close transatlantic cooperation is key and it's in our own interest. What we have to do now as Europeans is adapt to the new situation in Washington. Mr. President Trump is as he is, and we want to strengthen the transatlantic cooperation, but we will have to become more European in the next few years, and we have to do this very quickly, because we need to be more at eye level with the US. That means we have to do our homework in Europe, and unity will be key.
Nevertheless, there has been a certain fear that already on the first or second day after Donald Trump came into office again, that there would be tariffs against the European Union. This did not happen as of now. Do you think that Europe can relax now?
The European Commission is better prepared for this second Trump administration than it was 8 years ago. And one thing is clear, that we as the European Union have engaged with the new administration right from the first moment, trying to make clear that, of course, you can, if you wish, impose tariffs on imports from Europe to the United States, but this would be in the end a lose-lose situation for both sides, because tariffs would always be responded by retaliatory tariffs, and that can't be in our interest. So engaging with the US administration is the way forward. Engagement is much better than escalation. Mr. Trump likes the term tariffs. He once said in a campaign speech that it is actually his favorite word. We need to be on alert, but we also have to make clear, first of all, that we, as a European Union with a single market of 450 million people, are of huge interest also to the US economy, and that a trade war would be the totally wrong signal in these turbulent times.
There is, so you cannot tell me if we're off the hook for now or not, I guess. So there is nevertheless, is there maybe room for negotiations should Donald Trump come with tariffs, and where do you see that room for negotiations?
I would always recommend that we make concrete proposals, concrete offers to the US side. And Mr. Trump has a transactional way of doing policy. And this also means, if you look at the trade surplus we as Europeans have with the United States, what can we do to balance our trade a bit more? Where can we import more from the United States? Energy, defense equipment, other examples. Let's also have a look at our customs scheme. Are there certain products where there is a disadvantage for the US? So engagement is the way forward, not threatening with tariffs, as long as the other side has not imposed tariffs yet. So that is really what I see as so important. And the United States and the European Union together are responsible for 29% of global trade. We together can be super influential, and that's why the Trade and Technology Council will continue to hopefully play an important role, because this is exactly the format where we can discuss issues which need to be resolved when it comes to trade.
So you're in favor of engagement with the new Trump administration. Do you already see first steps where this is happening? Is the European Union doing enough to go forward and start this engagement? Do you get a good feedback on that also from the other side, or is it too early to say?
Well, we already experienced 4 years of Donald Trump in the White House, and remember, this was a bumpy ride. He has a disruptive style of conducting politics, and I think it's also fair to say that Europe is not a priority for Mr. Trump. We need to make our positions clear. We need to make clear to the Americans, yes, the US is our most important ally. The US is our most important trading partner. But on the other hand, it's also important for the United States to have partners and allies in Europe. And we have all these EU member states who are also rock-solid NATO allies, and it's good that we are in this together. I strongly believe that the United States is culturally, politically, economically our leading partner, and I sincerely hope that in Washington, people around the president, but also members of Congress, will also remember that this transatlantic alliance is unique in the world and that it is beneficial for both sides.
Thank you very much for your time.